chains. At the planning stage, what we see a lot of is people launching businesses in a non-existent local or regional supply chain and hoping everybody else shows up while trying to compete with the existing national global supply chain, which is a pretty tough way to go. So the idea of this is to get them working together at the planning stage and launching entire supply chains instead of the individual pieces and parts. We've used social network analysis to look at how things are changing in the community that comes to that site. So this is snapshots from 3 years in a row, 2009 to 2011. The new users show up in those outer rings as black dots, and they stay there. They don't really get involved in the conversation. Wherever you've had enough back and forth that there's a post and a reply, they show up in that center with lines connecting them. So you can see how that's growing over time. And of course, what we're looking for is the kind of topics, the kind of ideas, the kind of interaction that pull people out of that outer fringe into the conversation in the middle. The other place that we're using network analysis is looking at the supply chains that are possible that the site is designed to help promote. So in this image, the gray dots are existing businesses in Northeast Ohio. That's Cleveland right at the top. And the colored circles are business cases. And those lines are the supply chain connections that could exist if all those business cases proceeded to become plants and then businesses. The way that we've drawn those lines is we've prompted the users as they enter their business case to identify what are the needs that they're going to have as inputs coming into their business and what are they going to produce that will become output. And whenever there's an exact match between one business's output and somebody else's input, there's a line that gets drawn on the map. This is the closest we've come to the kind of ontology work that we were seeing already yesterday for us, where we have to be very clear about describing those supply chain connections for food systems, because if you're using different words, it just doesn't line up. So we've done that with this series of drop-down menus where we put the terms in. We always end on the far right with other and a text box where the user can put in a new term that then refines this even further. So that's our balance between us trying to provide kind of a referee function and setting the terms that are in those drop-downs, but opening it to the community to add new terms and continue to enrich that so that we can add those to the drop-down menus. Okay, a little bit about my kind of history. I'm a professor of entomology and bugs. So this is the kind of modeling that I've done earlier in my career. It's based on going back to Monoperdal and Forrester in the 50s and techniques in systems dynamics part from engineering and applied in ecology. And here the boxes and arrows take on very specific meaning. The boxes are state variables that represent the state of the system at that particular time. Those arrows are flows, the solid arrows are flows in and out of those state variables that show how it changes. The rate equations are the little bow ties, and they describe how quickly those flows occur. And then the information that informs those rate equations are coming from the state variables and auxiliary variables into those rate equations. So if you can actually plug equations in there, you can simulate how the system changes over time in terms of the values of those state variables. So example where I use this, this is the aster leafhopper in the upper left. It transmits a pathogen, the aster yellows phytoplasma to lettuce, which causes aster yellows. The disease actually is the disease cycle only occurs once in each crop, and it's the fact that farmers are planting lettuce 3 times a week across a broad region, and the movement of the leafhoppers from one crop to the next that actually results in an epidemic. So there's the model of the aster leafhopper population dynamics in the upper right, the lettuce planting on the lower left, and the disease cycle in the middle. And we can link this simulation of what's going on in each field to your geographic information systems database that has the locations and shape and arrangement of fields in a production region so that we can predict how this epidemic would occur and what kind of strategies the farmers could use to prevent it. So in this case, it turned out that just moving the lettuce planting 60 meters apart for the first 6 weeks of the season would have as much impact as all the spraying that they could do for aster leafhoppers and everything. That's what they've been doing. I was appointed to the Ohio Food Policy Advisory Council, which was established under the executive order of Governor Strickland last administration in 2008, and chaired the Food Systems Assessment Task Force. And the task there was very simple. We just had to assess everything that was food in Ohio. So I figured, well, that's easy enough. Two state variables. We've got what do we eat and where does it come from? It's either produced domestically or coming in from imports. And we have what do we produce and where does it come? Either exported or consumed within Ohio. So we just have 4 equations. We can figure out equations there and we're all set. Well, it turns out that there is actually a fair amount of data on, especially what we produce, coming from the Agricultural Statistics Service, data layer, National Ag Statistics Service. As far as the data and where it goes, that's a lot tougher to get your hands on and get it in any sort of consistent way in the form that you need it. So I think the Internet of Food would have to take into account, would be extremely useful for answering this question, but would have to take into account all of these various sources of data and pull them together in a sensible way. We weren't able to do that at the time, so what we did is we turned around and challenged the other task forces on the panel to come up with goals for the Ohio food system, and then we would figure out a way to measure progress towards those goals. So one of the goals was set by a Healthy Food Access Task Force, and it was to increase by 20% the access to healthy, fresh, and local food for Ohioans by 2020. Which, of course, led to a few questions. What do you mean by access? What do you mean by healthy? What do you mean by local? And what do you mean by fresh? So what we decided in the end, after a lot of discussion, is it boils down to 3 things, 3 Ds: diet, distance, and dough. So how much does it cost to assemble what the elements of a healthy diet, and how far do you have to go to round all of it up? And we had some ideas for methods that could be used to get at that question. But it took a few years to find the data to actually try those methods. And that happened when we had a group of students who went down to the Gulf Coast counties of Mississippi after Katrina and did a food system assessment, where they ran the USDA 30 food plan survey at the grocery stores throughout the street. USDA 30 food plan is a very representative, low cost, but balanced diet. So we had data on the prices, and what we developed was an algorithm that would calculate for each residential parcel in that area the cost, the minimum cost of all of the items in the USDA 30 food plan and the distance that it would take to round it all up through the shortest route or most effective route for the combination of those two. And then we map it. So there's the map. That's about a 2-fold difference between the red areas and the green areas. That's if you have a car. If you don't have a car, it's about a 4-fold difference. So we're very good about food as you sheet in the US. It depends on where you are and who you are and how much you have to assemble, especially a balanced diet. And the thing is that what people do is they respond to that foodscape in different ways. They don't go out and buy the USDA 30 food plan. It's way too expensive. They cut corners. So they respond behaviorally. We're repeating the study in Columbus and using we're using a survey of the residents in the area where we're doing the survey to look at how they're responding behaviorally to that landscape, and then how that behavioral response leads to a diet. So the behavioral response has been captured in the agent-based model, which my colleague Dr. Heider is leading. That will lead to a diet and health outcomes, which our colleagues in medical school can predict. So that now if we want to insert an intervention like these new supply chains we're encouraging, or in a grocery store, bus route, raise the minimum wage, who's that going to help? Where do they live? How's it going to translate to their diet and health outcomes? So you who were here yesterday will recognize that as the kind of population version of the model that Mikhail Lockett from Google Food presented. So summary, connectors that I see, especially from a model lens across disciplines, are GIS, SNA, and ADM. Those 3 tools are being used in ecology, economics, and social sciences. So you recognize the 3 pillars of sustainability. Great place to start in looking for a common language across modeling, across disciplines. The other kind of questions that have been emerging for me as I've listened to the conversation here is if we had an internet of food, how would that lead to food or storing of food? Where people can take on that set of inequities that I just showed that are profound in our food system along class, race, and gender lines and resolve that. And how can that internet of food reconnect people with their food supply and land? Those are some of the key questions. That's the reason we capitalize C in agriculture when we're talking about anything. Thanks.
So, thanks very much indeed, Katie. That was very well. So, over to our next speaker, Nick Poland from the other UCD. Who is okay. Again, I'll not pause for introductions. It's all in the web. Excellent.
I'd like to express my appreciation for being invited to speak here today. I also come from a soil background, and my research originally was on the environmental impact of agriculture, and I got into life cycle assessment because colleagues of mine in animal science were being given big sums of money to look at manipulating the diet of cows to reduce methane emissions. And I asked the question, well, does that really reduce the emissions globally, or does it just change the emissions where the animal is? And I managed to get 3 orders of magnitude less money to answer the question. And it remains a little bit like that for the big sexy things, as it were. You can get loads, and for some of the important but less immediate questions, perhaps you don't get quite as much money. But that's how I got into LCA. I don't think of LCA as being what I do. It's just a tool I use. It could be a mass spec or something. So it's not something that defines how I think about things I do. What I'm going to try and talk about now is briefly summarize what I think LCA is. Other people would look at it quite differently. There's quite a broad view in the detail, but overall, overarching, it's a reasonable consensus. I'm going to have a little look at the demand that LCA places on data, and compared to everything else I've heard since I've been here, the demand is really, really small. So it's a very different amount of data required to do something with LCA. I'm going to give you a couple of little examples of where terminology and misunderstanding arises, just things that have come out from work I've done recently, but it illustrates the importance of having some clear language in the agri-food system, and then some of my observations on common language. So what is LCA? Well, LCA I'm reluctant sometimes to call it a modeling technique. It's not really a modeling technique, it's an accounting technique where we look at the cradle-to-grave impacts of a system that delivers a particular function. So we ask ourselves, so what product, process, or service are we interested in? What's the function of that product, process, or service? And what's needed to deliver it? And theoretically, we start here on the left with the material extraction and the production phase. We go through a use phase and an end-of-life phase. And we try and look at the mass flows through the processes that allow that to happen. And included in those mass flows, I'm afraid that looks a bit washed out to me here. It's a nice diagram on the original site. We look at the environmental impacts of the mass flows that don't go where we want them, in other words, that are the pollutants. So if we have a system that we're interested in, we break it down into processes, and for each of those processes we look at the mass that goes in, the mass that goes out. And the ones that are dashed lines here are what we call elementary flows in life cycle system modeling. These are the ones that are either consumption of non-renewable resource or are a mass flow that's causing a pollution of some kind. And what we do with these elementary flows is we have the emission, we classify it, so if it's CO2, we could classify that as causing acidification in the atmosphere, or more likely, we would say it causes global warming eventually. So we classify it into an emission pathway. We then model that pathway, and we use a standard model to calculate the impact, and then we determine an impact. And at the end, we express the sum impact of the system in terms of the amount of the functional unit that the system produces. So if we produce 1,000 kilograms of milk, and that requires an emission of 1,100 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, and divide 1100 by 1000 to get our impact per functional unit. There are two types of LCA predominantly. There are more than that in reality, but the big ones are attribution and consequential. So in attribution LCA, it's typically described as looking for our slice of the pie. So if we take this blue donut, I'm going with a food analogy as it's food related. We have a blue donut. This represents all of the impacts of human activity. And in LCA, we're trying to figure out our share of those impacts. So if this is global food systems, we might say, well, this is the share of the total impacts due to global food systems. Now, from what you've seen this morning, you will know, without me having to say it, you're not going to be able to model that in an accounting procedure. You're not going to be able to work out every process, add it all up, put it through environmental pathways, and get a sum. So that's not really the scope of LCA. We might say local food that we've just heard about. Again, that's still too big for LCA. We might then dig a little deeper or cut a little finer and say, well, let's have a look at dairy within that local environment. So that's where my work has been in Ireland, on dairy predominantly. Now we've got a wedge that's small enough to be able to work with, and within that you might look at a particular product and say liquid milk for the consumer market. And on here you can't see it very clearly, but there's a tiny little wedge, and what we want is that little wedge. I'm going to say, what's our slice of the pie of the donut? For liquid milk in this area, what's its responsibility in terms of global impact? Of course, the problem is we don't know how big the donut is. So, for consequential LCA, we're doing it slightly differently. Here we're not saying what happened in the past and what's our share. We're saying if we change our demand for something, what happens to the total impact? So if we say we're not going to produce liquid milk anymore, what happens? Well, one thing that might happen is that we end up producing more impacts in the local food system. And why might that be? Well, it may be that the farmers go and do something that earns more money, and they spend it on things that have more impact, and it may not be food items at all. That's something we sometimes refer to as a rebound effect. So we can have increases in impact that have nothing to do with the system that we're necessarily thinking about. And if that liquid milk is perhaps produced in greater quantities somewhere else in the world, we might have it more efficiently, we might see a decrease. So now we no longer have a nice neat donut. The question we would ask is, does this donut get bigger or smaller as a result of change in demand? Theoretically, consequential LCA is the one to go with, in my view, but it's really, really difficult to do because you've got to figure out what the responses are to change in supply and demand and all the various pressures. And these pressures and pulls are not just environmental, they're social and economic. While I've given the illustration here, the introduction in the environmental domain, it's just as important to consider social life cycle assessment and life cycle costing. The three need to be combined together. So, the demand for data, I said it was much, much less than anything else we looked at. This is a diagram of a typical milk production system, schematically made very easy. And what we tend to do, despite the idea that we did cradle to grave, is we focus on bits that are of interest to stakeholders. So a lot of my early work was cradle to farm gate because it was the farm that we were interested in. Some of my current work is on dairy processing, so it's gate to gate, and we ignore the other bits because when you define a goal for us in LCA, you negotiate it with a stakeholder if you want to have a successful study, and the stakeholder rarely cares about all those extra bits in the whole system. So theory is one thing, practice is quite another. We have relatively little work on retail and consumption, at least in the food systems, and we get increased work now in the grave part here at the end of life. So I'm not all that interested in talking about the work I've done, but I want to take from the 15 years or so that I've been working on this is to just highlight a few things about the data that we've ended up using. If you look at the first work we did, and the first piece of work I did was the first carbon footprint of milk in Ireland. We used National Farm Survey for an average farm and 10 farms that we surveyed. And I mentioned this last night to Stephen. He said, well, you got lucky with your farms. And I got lucky with my farms because everything we found out is still the same now. We're using 18,000 farms in Ireland for dairy at the moment. We're looking at every beef farm twice a year. There's nowhere else in the world that does that. But we have that level of data acquisition. But if we look at it from an LCA perspective with all that data, we're not finding out anything that we knew when we just used cat farms. So we have to move from the accounting to get real mechanistic understanding. We're moving from collecting data from literature and hoping for the best to empirical observation. We're moving towards using standard databases. And I would say from the LCA Food Conference a couple of weeks ago in Dublin, the vast majority of studies use just two databases, EcoInvent and the database that comes from ThinkStone. And if the foreground data, the bits near the bit you're interested in, may be specific data collected with empirical observation, but the rest is all the same across all the studies. We do see some interest in NACE codes as well for economic input outputs into these kind of models. And that's something that strikes me as being important in the ontology space. I did a little search around to see whether anybody had looked at this from LCA, and we came across this piece of work from Joyce Cooper in Washington. So the paper that this diagram is screen grabbed from is just theoretical. There's no worked example in it. It's just saying, in principle, it will be possible to integrate LCA with big data and large data sets, and that's quite right. That is possible, but I haven't been able to analyze it in greater detail. Just to be quick on misunderstandings, this is a butter processing plant in the west of Ireland. I won't tell you which company it is or which town it's in. And just here, coming out of the churn, we have a white liquid. And for those of you who don't know what it was, and I have to say I'm not an expert on processing, I didn't know, so I asked and I was told it was buttermilk. I said, oh yeah, buttermilk, that's what I buy on a Saturday morning to make scones and brown bread. And I said, that must be the same thing, isn't it? Because it's buttermilk from churn. Well, no, it's not. Buttermilk that I buy is a completely processed product. It's nothing to do with buttermilk that comes out of the churn. So from an LCA perspective, we've got to be very careful when we're asking people for data, and we're giving them inventories to fit in, but the language that we use is actually the language they use. These girls have spent a lot of time looking at what comes out the back of them. And we think of it as waste, or we think of it as a resource. We have lots of words that describe it. In the LCA space, I just did a quick, it's a really poor survey, but I did a quick survey with Scopus. LCA there in 922 papers. And if I look at how many of them use these words to describe what comes out the back of the cow, the number of papers with these different words, even accounting for American and English spelling, is hugely different. Only one paper considered dirty water off a dairy farm. That's absolutely stunning to me, given how important it is. So we have an issue with something as simple and universal across all livestock agriculture. It won't be actually equivalent. And when we search the databases, the words differ significantly, which gives us some difficulties. So I'm not going to go through all this because I've heard it all yesterday. And I was really, really happy. I thought of these things before I came here, and I heard other people saying them. I can't be too far on, but the one I want to emphasize is the one at the bottom. The key thing for LCA to go forward and to be a useful tool is to integrate it with models to allow us to get numbers to use for activity where we can't make sufficient observations. And then finally, this is what LCA looks like typically in the food system at the moment. It's compartmentalized pillars that are associated with stakeholder input. And if we're moving to Internet of Food, we've got to get rid of that and actually go to doing LCA as it was originally intended to be done. And I would say for Internet of Food, there's a key thing that relates to that. That is, we have to define what we're doing for the goal, just like LCA does, and what the system boundary is, just like LCA does. Otherwise, it becomes meaningless. Just to prove I didn't play with the dirt, this is my looking for cryptosecurity and trying to done. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick. So, our next speaker, Roger Bolton, will be talking about wine fermentation modeling. With black.
Good morning. Very quickly, I'm going to talk about something that's so micro, it fits in the center of all the big diagrams you've seen so far. So I'm going to talk about a process model in an example that has mathematics, that has data outputs, that has useful across different levels of activity, from the pedigree of, I won't call it food security, the pedigree of ownership, through to a nutrient deficiency with one omega seeds. And the common theme is the model. So let's go through that. The wine condition is quite unusual because it's seasonal. You only get to make wine about weeks a year. So I'm not talking milk, I'm not talking beer, I'm talking about something you have a snapshot. So if you're not ready for it, you're going to miss it. And it becomes critically valuable and it's perishable. So it's the ultimate in how you make good food properly and how you guarantee that. It's an example of how we relate physical things, density, temperature, chemistry, how to understand all those and put them together. And that's physics and mathematics and chemistry. So a lot of physical chemistry between composition of sugar, ethanol, glycerol, and a bit of extract, and how that shows up as density, surface tension, refractive index, or some other property that you measure. Okay, so we're interested in the process of measurement piece, and we're interested in the yeast population modeling with the outcomes and how we put all that together in mathematics. The other parts of that would be how we understand the energy requirement for refrigeration and cooling loads. How do we understand the CO2 emission, the ethanol emission, transient, periodic, pulse releases, and how do you aggregate at the global scale, regional scale, in a fermented scale, and a batch of vineyards, grapes that we need to put together. So I want to go through that. How interested in computation gets down to, can you run these simulations on a chip? You can run what effectively is, I'll show you a set of equations in a model which we can run faster than Mathematica and more precisely than Mathematica, except it's 0.2 megawatts. And if you sent a really bad resolution photograph to film last night, that'd be much more than that. So we're talking about how to make models really smart and really compact so they actually work on chips. Now the question is, where's the data, not where's the model? But equally well, how do you throw that over the cloud and let someone else in another place run their simulations on the same kind of thing? Then I'll make a few comments about future, what data we get in the future, and some limitations. The most common traditional practice of how to follow fermentation is density. And depending on which country you're in, we can talk about different density scales. But the point is, the sugar content is about 10% extra density in water. And by the time we get to ethanol, we're a bit less dense than water. And so the traditional way of following that progression to understand when does it start, when does it finish, and how fast it's going, is to follow the density. It sounds pretty simple, except now we're talking about aggregate conditions. We could grab samples around chemistry, and people do run chemistry. The problem is they don't know how to relate it back to density. So physical measurements, you've got secondary chemistry, and we typically don't know how to convert them very well. We can measure weight loss. I could put the fermenter on a scale, and we'll lose about 10% of weight. It's about half of the sugar ends up as CO2, and the rest of it is ethanol. So if you're starting with 200 grams per litre sugar, about 100 grams is going to be lost to CO2. If you can measure that, you have a fermentation curve. That's really cool because it's independent of temperature. A lot of reasons for doing it. Trouble is very difficult to do with sensitivity. People measure gas evolution, people measure refractive index, other solution properties, but we've all got to relate them back to composition because the composition is what's the basis of the yeast model population modeling, and that's the property that drives the whole. We typically run in fancy fermenters, and you can't see two of the aromatic. So what I'm going to give you is an old model, and the emphasis on old. It's back to 1976. And it's not just a model with the bow ties we talked about, it's not just the boxes and the big picture, it's the set of equations. And how we solve that set of equations, we want to run them very efficiently, and we actually want to do the granular explanation that different former speakers have alluded to. We actually want a model where the parameters are calculated for each particular fermentation. So it's not just having a model, it's a very adaptive model and a parameter estimation function that lets you fit each fermentation and interpret it because whether its nutrient status is good, whether it looks like the yeast more sensitive to ethanol, whatever it be, if it's in the model, you can understand. Set equations, so I'll show you those. I thought I'd go through one here, a few more equations. The most important one about the set of equations is the rate of change in density is now a fundamental equation in the model. So I can talk about yeast content, temperature, glucose and fructose content, but what's really important is I need to have a model that tells me about density because that's something I can measure. And that density has to be tied to the properties of all the other things we just talked about. And so if I can split out the weight component and the volume component, I can actually model the density. We want to estimate the progression in composition, but we really want to estimate the parameters. I want to understand in 10 different grape juices whether one's got a higher status than the other one. And the fermentation is going to go differently because of that. I'm going to see the fermentation going differently. I'm going to run the model and I'm going to use the parameters to help me understand. So at the very local level, you've got a winemaker in front of a tank and a fermenter trying to understand that. And at the same time, the model is going to do emissions of ethanol. So the emissions to the air resources board on ozone precursors in different places, and CO2 that's rising is actually also again coming point. So we would calculate all the properties that are in part of it, the measures that people would do. We could estimate the emissions of both water, ethanol, and CO2, not only in total but in time. Now you've got the ability to overlap things dynamically. Now you've got the ability to understand how a crescendo of different and related events is, not just what the total number is. Okay, so a very strong dynamic component, not just total balances. I mentioned this is the source of the Air Resources Board of the EPA, so if you go to the emissions of ethanol in the world of wine, this model was actually the anchor for ethanol emissions. Typical density curve, we run 150 fermenters. We would follow a density curve like that. You may or may not be able to see them, but those are in good place. It's a little bit overkill in data collection, but we're doing it for other reasons. The point is the temperature is held constant, density is followed, and what would you interpret from that? If you had the mathematical model, we would throw it at that. We would understand the layer phase, we would understand the nitrogen status, and we'd be able to predict the progress of the fermentation. We would calculate the heat release, the CO2 release, the ethanol emission, all in a model, which is 0.2 megawatts. So it's a real challenge of seeing it locally. It's a challenge of could you go to a database and find it? And the real question is, could you be in Italy and see it on the phone? The answer is yes. And it's all the same model. The question comes, who would use it? And so the winemaker might want to understand where the fermentation is going on. Standing in front of them or somewhere else. We might want to track it. We want a timestamp when it started and finished that fits into a bigger category of what the history of the wine is. We might want as a production record, did it work well or didn't do it, and how much energy it take or how long it would take, and what it occupied 10, 3 weeks longer. But more important in the future is the term pedigree. If we're going to talk nutrition and value and quality in business, I don't understand what the word pedigree is missing. Okay, if we were talking about breeding racehorses, we'd be talking about pedigrees. I won't get into all families, and even this is a member of the Funny Accent Society, which we read this morning. The point is, pedigree is really the traceability and the ownership guarantee lineage, which is missing in much of the discussion today. But that fermentation model will tell us that. The winery is interested in the energy loads of how to account for them, how to bank their energy into ice or thermal storage. The emission rates for reporting for transfer real time or otherwise. But the region might be interested in the total energy load for a certain point in time in the afternoon refrigeration and harvest season. And the group emission rates of the ethanol and the delta, those are all coming from the recycle. You'd like to see it at the fermenter, you'd like to be able to get information back to you at the fermenter from the model. You'd want it in a system that the engineering systems and the energy people might be running. And you want to be able to see it elsewhere. So you want to see the different platforms as well as just what you're guessing. And it might be a single fermentation part of ownership and pedigree. It might go into components in labeling and verification. And it might be the kind of information we will show consumers where these drugs come from, whether they fail to fermented, and where is it all fit together. What is central to that? Limitations is the absence of standards. We'll go through these. I think you've discussed them already. The difficulty is that many of these things are still not in real time and they're not available. So how do we change that? Because the baseline is there, the information is there. You can't get out, even though people are sometimes looking for it. In the future, we might measure a whole lot of other things, from redox potentials to carbon phenolics to yeast counts, control redox fermentations. Now, where is it on Bluetooth and where is it on the cloud? And the answer is where's the log, where's the measurements, where's the obvious. I want to quickly thank Matthew for putting this conference together, for asking us to do it. I hope the piece I'm going to is relevant in the bigger picture of everything that we're talking about in this session. And I hope you have the chance to come and see the winery and brewery facility on campus, which is designed to be the first self-sustainable facility of its kind in the world. Energy positive, water positive, self-sustainable, zero carbon emission. It'd be a wonderful thing if we could be quite there with that close as well. Thank you for your attention. Look forward to the conversations.
So thank you very much, Roger. Excellent keeping to time as well. What a wonderful idea, fully sustainable system that produces wine. So over to our next presentation, Justin Siegel, protein modeling.
All right. So I'm going to start off. I didn't read my emails, so I didn't know I was giving a presentation. So this is my picture. So I'll start off. I'm pretty excited actually to be here because I don't have to talk about consortiums or trying to get groups together. I actually get to talk about the science that I do. I've been at all these food conferences recently talking about the Innovation Institute for Food and Health and how we change the food system together. And today I actually get to talk about what I'm personally doing within this realm, and I'll relate it back to the Internet of Food and how within my field at least, ontologies and standardized vocabulary can really enable the field to do some phenomenal things. So, as mentioned, I made a protein folder. If you're not familiar, this is a very pixelated, it looks nicer on the computer, but here is a very pixelated version of a protein. And so this is a video game that I was helping co-develop about almost 10 years ago now, called Folded. And we have almost 1 million users around the world. And it takes protein folding and turns it into a video game. And it does that through basically, as you can see, it looks like Tetris, almost a 3-dimensional space, and players get scores, and you can compete against each other, and there's challenges that are put up to help think about how do you fold proteins. But then the question is, why would you want to fold a protein, or why would you want to, when you fold a protein, why would that matter at all? And that really comes because a protein structure dictates its function. And if you go out to nature, all of natural material is transformed through enzymes. That is the primary catalyst used throughout nature for taking one compound into another and performing and generating all of the material in the world today, in the natural world. Clearly, in the modern world, we've been using synthetic chemistry for the last couple hundred years. But in the natural world, for millions of years, it's been transformations that occurred through enzymes. They're green, they're highly efficient, and they're scalable catalysts that can actually help transform matter. So why haven't we used those traditionally? And traditionally, in the synthetic world, traditionally we haven't used them because they're really hard to obtain. But in the last 5 years, that has fundamentally changed through technological innovations. So we can, at this point, a high school student can type in on a computer a DNA sequence they want that encodes a protein, and for $100, that gene shows up in the lab a week later. and then there's no additional work that has to be done. That DNA sequence doesn't have to have existed before, that protein doesn't have to have existed before. It can be literally something of your imagination, your creation. And so when you can think about that, all of a sudden a lot of the work that went into isolating these proteins and isolating the DNA and isolating the biological systems that enable the catalysis that's found within nature disappears. You can do it instantaneously for free, essentially. And so then the question is, how do we want to use that? So now we have the power of nature at our hands, and we can manipulate it and have free will. So how do we want to use that for what we are needing today? Maybe that we are now moving beyond what nature has provided us and moving into a modern world. How can we use the tools of nature to empower our lives and make our lives better? And so one of the ways that I've been focusing on that particularly is thinking about how we use enzymes, we can engineer enzymes to modulate and manipulate the food that we use and we eat. And this is not a new concept. DSM and Novozymes and Genocor and all these companies have actually been doing this for a long time. And pretty much every food we eat has recombinant protein in it these days. And that recombinant protein helps prevent the breads from going stale, enhancing flavors, enhancing overall and lowering production costs and improving the way these systems work. Roger probably knows that their enzymes are used all the time in winemaking for an industry where you add lysozyme or other additives to help bacterial blooms and prevent that. Those types of contaminants. But we can actually move to the next step. We can start thinking about, well, as opposed to just relying on what nature has provided us, we can start thinking about, well, we can actually start with a problem and working our way back to what do we want from nature? How do we get there? And so a nice example is for celiac disease or kidney stones, for hyperoxaluria or for gout, or for a lot of diseases that stem from the foods we eat because of overnutrition or undernutrition. We can in real time transform that matter to get rid of immunogenic epitopes, get rid of oxalate or uric acid or other compounds that are within our food that cause these diseases when we are exposed to either too much or too little of them. We can add or remove them in real time by adding the correct enzymes in the system. You just have to have an enzyme that works under the conditions that you want. So maybe it works within your stomach, or works within your food processing plant, or works maybe back all the way to the plant if you want to get into the GMO arguments, but it's not necessary. You can actually have it go way down the stream into processing stages. So we've developed several, so those are all real life examples that we've been developing. We have a therapeutic going into the clinics really shortly that very specifically targets immunogenic epitopes within gluten. So if you have celiac disease or some forms of gluten intolerance, you could eat a pasta and all you have to do is pop a pill like the lactate pill or the pill or anything along those lines ahead of time. And all of a sudden, it's like you never ate gluten because those biological triggers, those molecular triggers are gone. We can manipulate them in real time in the system and environment. And that's all due to this technology. But the underlying reason why that's actually possible is the ontology nomenclature that was put in place back in the 60s when protein structures were first started. Back in 1960, or 58 actually, I think it was the first structure by Hertz and Kendrew. And people thought it was somewhat just kind of a novelty to be hard to get protein structures. And all of a sudden there was a boom and more people started getting protein structures. And we started realizing that a protein wasn't this amorphous object, it was a very structured object. That these structured objects have specific functions, that if we change their structure, we could change their function. If we understood their structure, we would understand their function. And so they came up with a standardized nomenclature and a standardized database that's still used today in the early 1970s that defines, in this picture here, what each of these blue dots is, what each atom in the molecule is, how this is actually even represented. Why does these look like little flat areas and curved areas? So all of it was standardized so you can instantly give to a student, someone in the field, a picture of this or a simple text file, and they can deconvolute it. And it can be done worldwide without any translator or any specialty lab. Everyone in the world can do it at this point. So that standardization of how we define atoms, and how we define the interconnectivity of the atoms, and how we define the terms that go along with the use of those atoms, enable the underlying field to grow around that nomenclature and provide the capabilities that we have today. I think that's all I got.
Thanks very much. So, folks, our last presentation is from afar. Pierluigi Butberg, is he calling in from where? Germany?
Yes.
Okay. And
Max Planck Institute.
it's going to be one of these Skype presentations, so just bear with Matt for a few moments. Keep talking. So, we're going to overrun, clearly, from the program. We've agreed that we'll take this session through to about 20 or quarter to. So after Pierluigi's presentation, we're going to have 15 or 20 minutes of discussion time, at which point the questions that hopefully you've been holding for the speakers can be prepared and discussed. So at that point, we could just have a bit of a panel and see how we go. I'm sorry it's eating into the coffee break, but it'll be okay. Right.
Almost loaded up here.
So meanwhile, any point anyone would like to raise at this stage? You've got a few moments. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Could you clarify how to break up atoms or atoms?
I can't, Matt can, and he'll do that in just a moment.
Here, can you hear me? So we'll try to make you a little bit louder.
All right.
Can we're getting a little washed out on the screen here. Can you dim down the lights above the screen?
So we're set to go.
Almost.
Okay, so Pierluigi Butberg from the Max Planck Institute of Marine Microbiology will be talking about ontologies and enhanced microbial ecology modeling. So we're going to come back to the ontologies. We've started with broadest food system concepts. We've drilled down and down and down and down, and now we're going to talk about our overall ontology. So,
All right, let me know when you can see the slides.
Yeah. 1 second. You can see them now.
I can see anything,
okay.
but
I'm sorry. Did you say you can or cannot see them?
I cannot.
You can share yours a second ago that I can see.
Oh, you can see. Okay, let's try that again. Let's try that.
Tell me when you can turn them on.
Yep, it should be on now.
Oh, wonderful. 1 second.
Good on that.
I think we're good to go.
Great. Okay, so
Wait, I'm sorry. We're not quite sharing the wrong. I was looking at my presentation and I heard copy. I believe now we are actually good to go.
right, I'm going to change the slide. So did you see me change the slide?
Yes, there's about a 2-second lag. If you just be mindful of that, then I think you're okay.
Sure. All right. Okay. So good morning, and thank you everybody for receiving me in my disembodied state. I'll try to keep this short, but give you an idea of what we're up to in terms of bridging food semantics and ecological semantics across multiple scales. The sort of bridge that I think is quite important to that for global planetary modeling. So the motivation for creating this bridge comes from policy objectives, global policy objectives, such as the Millennium Development Goals, which recently came to a close. This process showed, in the lessons learned, so post-mortem of the MDGs, it showed that what we do in our food systems pulls from our global ecosystem. There's no way around it. There's going to be an ecosystem impact, and every goal, such as reducing poverty or hunger, is going to affect others, such as conserving ecosystems, ecosystem services, and planetary integrity. In the next iteration of the global policy objective, sustainable development goals, that will be with us until 2030, we have much the same pace. Goals like 1, 2, 3, 6, they're very closely tied to food systems and food semantics, but of course they're going to pull from goals like 13, 14, 15, and others. It's all very interconnected. And thus, my belief is that we must develop food semantics and environmental semantics to be very closely equal. Right. It comes from this idea that we have to sort of let go of human exception and realize that our human social systems are embedded within a global ecosystem, and the sustainable access systems that the SDGs strive to talk about are simply another part of the biosphere that is to interface with that global ecosystem. It's quite easy to appreciate this when you realize we're essentially on the same spaceship with planetary survival systems part of the SDGs that are keeping us alive. And it's up to us as global engineers to ensure that the integrity of that space remains. So this starts with NGROW. My foray into food semantics started with modeling of environmental systems through a project called NGROW, which is a community project, an open project, to clarify the semantics of environmental entities. I'm going to look at these in a moment. NGROW is inside a family of biomedical and biological ontologies that are trying to cover a broad spectrum of biological and non-biological entities through the addition of ontologies such as NGROW. Now we span a series of spatial scales, going from molecules up to ecosystems up to planets. And we also span temporal scales, going from things that persist through time or continuous, and things that occur or unfold through time, occurrence. Using that sort of logical structure allows us to articulate entities in a way that machines can understand. Right. So NGROW has a certain way of approaching this problem. It models things in different resolution. First at a broad scale, including biomes, ecoregions, ecozones, etc. Then going zooming into entities in a mesoscale, entities such as coral reefs, hospitals, cloud mountains, etc. And the materials that surround entities of interest in that ecosystem, such as water, air, soil, water, chemistry, as they need. Of course, we have also processes that link all these entities together. Those biomes also include anthropogenic biomes or anthropons, such as croplands, again, another natural link to food systems and reproduction. And classes again involve that growth foods, again, we didn't know where to look at. We are happily handed over to experts in food science and seeded in new ontology inside this federation of African ontologies, using safety rules to promote interoperability. This is how NGROW goes about modeling things, and this is what we're trying to hand over. Excuse me. This is what we're trying to hand over to ontologies like the food ontology and the environment ontology, which we'll hear about in a bit. So for modeling oasis, we try to represent its origin, its inheritance, and the problems that make an oasis an oasis in a logical structure that machines can also parse and understand. So here we hand this to remote sensing apparatus and allow us to learn the necessary criteria to match each one of those classes, all the detection methodologies to be. That's how we dissect this between those biometers and materials. And as soon as you get to some sort of primary relation, we are at the foundation of the food chain, and therefore linked to food semantics and food production systems. So when NGROW developers see something like this, we don't really see a forest. What we see is a semantic battlefield. This is a war zone for us, primarily because there are hundreds of definitions of environmental entities, all using the same label. To look at some work from Lund, which has put together a running commentary on this, In 2013, we had assembled about 1,600, if you look at the bottom of my cell, of that first table, 1,600 official definitions of forest. Depending on who you are, or where you are, what your objective is, that word can have many, many different meanings. And what we try to do is unpack that in Ember. It's quite important to do this unpacking, because if you change the definition of forest, your picture of the world drastically changes. For example, if you take into account county coverage, at 10% county coverage, the world that's much more forested than 30% county coverage. And this can have important impacts on policy development to say. And those forests are the biodiversity reserves which ensure our future food supplies, and not just forests, but other ecosystems, which have similar semantic issues. So again, in what we're trying to choose, we have all the 800 of them at the moment, but we're trying to choose the key definitions and the key forest entities that are out there, unpack them, and move them into other methodologies and systems from policy to their roles and the processes associated with it. Again, many of those entities are natural bridges to food semantics and food systems, which are happy to explore in people who are animals. Now most of our world is actually covered by croplands and other kinds of food production systems. So again, animals' interest in terms of ecology must be associated with food production. It also goes to the scale of very small. I mentioned kimchi. As a microbiologist, it makes me very excited because inside kimchi there are many microbes. It's a fantastic microbial environment where many interesting things are happening. This extends, this has motivated us to branch off of new ontologies out of Limbo and engage experts who can take them further. These include agro and agronomy ontology and food ontology inside of boundary ontologies. So the concept that we're in Limbo, as you can see below those ontologies, have been to see these and teams are developing. For example, agro has now turned off to a team led by researchers from Biodiversity International and the CGIA Park. Assisted by myself and Chris Condell at the University of Perth to get underwriting. Same sort of principles that are in Limbo can be used there to find an integrated ecosystem of cropland line, find some energy and interest from the key plants, and zoom into that to figure out what process is affecting that to communities, depending on what other sensing technology we're using, including field surveys for farmers. And if you have carcass around there, releasing ammonia into the soil, we can link up with other ontologies like CAGI, the chemical energy biological ontology, to open up and prevent ourselves from regional equivalents to done very well, to qualify what ammonia is, not just in terms of its chemical features, but also in terms of biological roles and applications, allowing much more advanced querying and analysis at a later stage. Imagine moving data along all of these dimensions, reorganizing and enhancing them all to question dimensions. That's what we're hoping that will also enable us to integrate policy goals. Same is true for food and food is just preliminary photo. Same sort of story. We engaged very talented people to carry this forward because, of course, they certainly don't know as much about food as those assembled. But we're trying to share those best practices and those interoperability standards that use the local country to allow us to map this to existing standards and produce some sort of coherence. The same would be able to address the wild semantic regional environmental intelligence, like forests. My role is also to remind people that, well, it's not just human food that should be accessible to semantics like food. There are catch-ons that can provide all sorts of things. Basicals are being created as we speak. There are nylon creating bacteria around for quite a few decades. So that's also important in terms of thinking about our planetary ecosystem. What things are needed that are not humans. Here we see a set of local sources of methane, and we study the ocean. And the ocean contributes a very small percentage of methane in its size. That's because about 90% of that methane is consumed by microbial processes. In other words, microbes eat. Down there in the sediments where members of our group will deploy various sorts of technologies to investigate lack of events and code methane seeds. This is a piece. It doesn't look like it, but this is an absolute piece activities going on. And so, where methane rolls up, the oxygen is trying to penetrate down, and where it quickly runs out just to get deeper. There are little microbes generating methane, and methane is also being released from methane hybrids, being destabilized by rising temperatures. That, of course, has consequences to our entire globe, and also affects food systems quite dramatically. And, well, luckily for us, there are organisms that are without drops, that are eating their methane very quickly. In various regions of the sedentary subsurface. So that's the sort of dimension I want to include in food semantics to allow me to bridge over to food webs that are not connected to humans, but will be connected to them through other means and processes. So that nesting is really key. And again, the same semantics can be repeated, where foods evolve and adhere in many different kinds of entities, be it chemical, and eventually bridge to the existing water semantics through the environment and food semantics through the role of food. There you go. And again, like every food ontology helps us to achieve each one of those domains without attempting to build one ontology to all, which usually doesn't work. Just to close, we see again that we're talking about resilient food systems. There is that link, there is that link that keeps coming back to the entire global system. That compels global change, and we must take all those dimensions. So the take-home message is that we have to think about planetary processes, and there's a very large biosphere scale picture of food semantics that we must keep in mind to bring coherence, to that domain. Right, that's all for me. Lots of acknowledgements. There are lots of people involved in building engineering technologies, lots of expertise, and what we can improve. But I did mention that we are also working on ontology with the United Nations Farming Program to represent the same framework of sustainable development goals and tie these existing ontologies to that global policy growth. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll leave you with an octopus. We saw 4 kilometers down in our ocean, and of course your questions. Thank you.
That was awesome, Luigi. Thank you so much. That was exactly the right last presentation for the section. I'd like to ask you a favor, Pierre, if you could pull up that concept map that you had, and we'll just keep that safe in the background. And if I could ask our presenters for this session to come on up, and we'll have a brief question and answer panel discussion about how we're going to connect all these concepts on these varied levels of abstraction. You notice we started at the global scale, food systems, and went all the way down into the molecular. Please come on, take a seat at the panel, and we can talk about this. And then I'll give us. I know we're running a little bit behind, so maybe we'll do 3 or 4 questions, and we have enough. I think we have enough seats here. You're still there, right?
Yes,
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's perfect. So we're not going to talk about that yet, but I want to come back to that picture. So you're already doing this, Pierluigi, and I'm wondering what kind of challenges you face in bridging these gaps between sort of layers of abstraction, going from things that were very finite in consideration to more abstract concepts, and then if you could just comment briefly about what that means in terms of your ability to essentially build reasoners over the system. And then I'll sort of pass that same baton on to our panel.
The more part is coherence. Again, there aren't that many people working on this dimension inside the overall company. And it's not just the technology. Technology is relatively quickly massive, but it's also the logical approach to start to unpack these entities, the representation. That's why we get training, of course, is possible, but it's hard to get that spread out. It's happening more now, and people see the benefit of it. So really, what I found to be a great remedy to that were the activity of synthesis centers, such as the National Center for Ecological Analysis and Synthesis in the US, South Florida. And in Europe, we have ICFOODS in Germany and Cesar in France. Those really help to bring people together who ordinarily would not talk about ontologies at all, and show them the value of communicating through ontology to avoid endless debates about terminology when semantics is easily parsed.
Thanks. Would any of our panelists like to comment on the ability to either move up or down sort of levels of scale or levels of abstraction in regards to their domain things?
We'll try something, yeah. It's John here. One of the things that I've realised about food systems is that they, of course, span across multiple temporal, spatial, jurisdictional, institutional levels. So being able to cope with not just across spatial levels, but how spatial levels interact with temporal levels, and the complexity of that come up in the cache that you may remember a few years ago, is at the heart of food system complexity. The diagrams that I've been using appear planar, but in fact they're multi-dimensional because there are so many different dimensions, so many different scales of work, time scale, space scale, jurisdictional scale. And so we do need to have the ability to be able to say, so what, as I use that phrase, not just for here and now, but for over there and tomorrow. And it's the interconnectivity that is the food system at the basis. So challenging. How that maps onto these sorts of diagrams we've got on the screen, I don't know, but I can see a value in trying to get a better grasp of the language we need to explain this multi-scalar interaction. Right. Thank you.
One thing to say that the uses for modeling require more relationships in the ontologies. Right, when you're talking about communicating, passing between scales, you're talking about aggregation of information, the value of that aggregation, you're talking about the diversity in the individual scale gets aggregated up into distributions. At the higher level, do you need the extremes? Do you need the averages of those things? Because you bring in statistics to that. And temporal scales. I mean, modeling essentially is dynamic. So understanding the time scale on which things happen. Some things happen in a slow process, some things happen over a long process, some things happen very quickly, but very erratically. So when we've been trying to do that sort of qualitative modeling and get information from experts about complex systems, one thing that is not in there often, but it's critically missing, is that standardization or just bringing it into the discussion about timescales as things happening. Because you put two things into one picture that are on different timescales, try and do some dynamics, and then you're going to get jump, basically. And it's been a problem, so that's my comment on that timescales as well as sort of aggregating and disaggregation.
That's great. I think that's an important point that when we talk about things at a global scale, the time scales are much slower generally than when we talk about things at molecular level. You use both extremes. Roger, Green, that's right.
So I just agree. It is the time scales. Let me give you a quick example. Grapevines take up carbon over about a 4-month period, 6-month period each year, typically when leaves are growing and berries are making sugar. Then we ferment them in 8 weeks and release at least half of that CO2 back in the atmosphere. If you do a balance on that, you can say you net zero carbon. But if you look at it on a monthly basis, one group is actually sucking it up and the other group is spewing it out. And the answer is, you're going to say it's net zero, so you don't have to do anything. So the time scales are critical because they are averaged out or cancelled out in a big summation. And it's got to be the dynamics of the rate equation, which is what we're getting that to the market. It's got to have the time element in it, and I agree with you entirely. It's got to be scaled by short, quick, and long scale. And we don't have that discussion in this market nation yet.
Maybe I'll add an additional dimension just from personal experience of watching databases and these systems grow. It's critical at a meeting such as this for many different stakeholders, particularly as diverse as the food system, to get together to understand the needs of what these ontologies and data systems are going to be used for. And once those needs are understood, it's really critical to develop the underlying tools in a way that is accessible to the broader population. And that way I say that is the tool that I introduced earlier for modeling protein. We started off developing it in Fortran, and there were 2 people in the world that knew how to use it. And then we moved to a Fortran C++ hybrid, and there was 5 people in the world that knew how to use it. And then we decided to start from scratch, use standardized systems, and move to C++. Now there are literally thousands of people around the world developing those tools in real time, and the utility of it has exploded. And so once you understand what your stakeholders want, thinking about how it's developed and making sure that it's accessible in a standardized way to a broader community is going to be critical for adaptation of the tools.
Yeah, I would really strongly agree with that. That level of tool developers that are consuming these information artifacts and ontologies, really establishing what the relationship is to the actual tool data that are associated with the semantic clarity offered by it. That's kind of missing right now. In academia, it's not enough incentive to do that in terms of publishing papers, I feel. And I think that's something that really needs to be built.
I was just going to ask along similar lines, what role, you talked about sort of gamifying protein folding. Can you tell us who you are? Oh, I'm sorry, Wilford with the Monger, which we're a platform that deals with specialty. And I was just going to ask what the role of the users are in the establishments of the ontologies, and what possible role tools, crowdsourcing tools, game-like tools might play in the sort of structuring of this, because I think that's a really critical element, getting as much input as possible from the people involved in that. And there's a lot of exciting new ways of doing that these days.
So that was it was very, so I think I can address the question on gamification in that sense. So that was a very iterative process. I didn't highlight the way language was used in the video game that I posted there, but there were scientific terms such as steric clashes or steric interactions or van der Waals forces or dynamic minimization, that we all of a sudden had to transform those technical terms into wiggle, shake, and fireworks would show up on the screen when a new blue bond was made to impart that to the user that something positive had happened and what that positive thing meant. And so what we found is over time, the gamers actually started learning the underlying scientific language because it was provided there to satisfy people like me that really, when I'm teaching my students, I wanted to show them what the electrostatic potential was. As opposed to just I can't remember the term for that in the game at the moment, but what the general audience term was. But having connectivity between a broad terminology used by a broad audience and terminology used by the scientific community was key in having adaptation of that game.
Okay, that was perfect. I love this idea of gamification, and I want to take it further, but we are just about half an hour overscheduled here. So I want to give you guys a brief look at what we're going to be doing through the workshops and the panel discussions. So we're going to, as soon as I'm done talking, we'll break for a few minutes, and we're going to close these walls right here between these rooms, and we're going to break into our breakout sessions with the panel discussions, and then into the workshops. And I just want to explain to you what's going to happen in these workshops. So during the panel discussions, you're going to hear from people who are experts and or stakeholders in each of these domains from various perspectives. And the idea of throwing all of you in the room together to listen to each other is to actually be interactive once we hear from you and what you're doing, whether you have slides or not, that is fine. And what we want, ultimately, is we want to actually have work product come out of these workshops. So this isn't, let's just sit around and convince about how the fact that there's no language and there's nothing we can do about it. We actually want to build conceptual models for that. And what you see on the screen behind me, what Pierluigi has here is a C map or a concept map. And what's different about a concept map from a mind map is that mind maps are generally in a tree structure and they don't contain linkages between terms. And if they do, they're often not named. You'll notice in this concept map that all the linkages are named, the linkages between the concepts. So your task in your workshops, after you speak with each other, is to develop high-level concept maps of how, for instance, food habits link with nutritional outcomes. How does food composition link with nutritional outcomes? What are the relationships between these high-level concepts all the way down to low-level concepts? How do I define health? What's important in terms of soil, right? So we want you guys to talk about doing that, and we will have students in each of the breakout sessions who will actually be taking the maps that we'll be making on paper and transforming them into electronic concept maps like this, so that at the end of the workshops, at the end of the day, we'll be able to actually see models just like this. So, are there any questions about what that's going to look like? And if you identify, if you identify resources where we can find databases on a particular concept, and you have a URL for that, you can tell the student, you can write it down on paper, and they will actually be able to drag those resources right in. These concept maps will be up online for you to interact with and play with, for everybody to look at. They'll be part of the ICFOODS website. And there will be an outcome, and there's certainly no reason why that we can't take this preliminary model that we're building, this conceptual framework for essentially building out the Internet of Food. And we have 6 breakout discussions. There's no reason we can't have 6 white papers, at least out of this conversation, if not more, or 6 chapters in a larger white paper about what the conceptual model for the Internet of Food looks like. Okay, so we're going to start here.